Hi everyone, my name is Moni.
And I'm Naveen from Before You Play.
And today we're going to be showing you how to play a game that is currently on Kickstarter called Wild Serengeti.
This is a 1 to 4 player game in which we are going to be trying to make a documentary about different animals in the Serengeti. It's designed by Gunho Kim and published by Bad Comet, and they're the ones who are sponsoring this tutorial and preview.
That's right. It's going to be a competition to see who can create the highest scoring documentary
That's right.
on the Serengeti.
Mm-hmm.
And so before we begin, we do want to mention that since this is a Kickstarter, this is technically considered a prototype copy of the game. Even though it is a very high quality prototype, things are still subject to change in the final copy. And also, if you're interested in learning more about the game, we will include a link to their Kickstarter campaign down below.
And last but not least, if you'd like to see more videos like this in the future, please consider subscribing.
And with that, I think we're ready to begin, right?
Yep, that's it.
So, if you please direct your attention to the center of the table, we are all set up here for a 2-player game of Wild Serengeti. Welcome to the Serengeti.
Yes.
It is pretty barren at the moment because all the animals are hanging out over here.
They're ready to go in.
They are. And so just to kind of give you the lay of the land, in the middle here we have the main board, which is of course the Serengeti, where we're going to be placing animals out onto. The board is divided into a lot of different spaces that encompass a specific type of terrain. And they're all marked accordingly. So these middle areas here are all water. We also have rock areas, grasslands, and woodlands. So those are the 4 different types of terrain, which we're going to be placing these 4 different categories of animals onto. And so the whole purpose of this is because we are going to be fulfilling these scene cards, because these cards have a specific requirement of an animal arrangement on the board.
Yeah, you want to have your animals configured in a certain way so that when you fulfill that scene card, you're able to capture them for your documentary.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Speaking of scene cards, before we get into how to play the game, let's talk about the anatomy of a scene card.
Sure.
Scene cards look like this. There are 3 main types of scene cards. You have the terrain, the straight line, and the adjacency scene. And these basically just tell you the configuration the animals need to be in on the board in order to score them. So starting with the terrain scene cards, these tell us just what type of terrain you need the specific animals to be on in order to fulfill it and score that many points, which is 7 points. So in this example, it wants a zebra to be on a woodland space, a leopard on a woodland space, as well as a crocodile on a grassland space. Once that's present on the board, then you score 7 points. A straight line scene card requires you to have these 3 animals in a straight line on the board, and some of them are also required to be on specific terrain types. In this example, you need a zebra on a rock terrain, followed by a vulture on a grassland, and just any crocodile, as long as it's in a straight line. They're in a straight line right now, and spaces in between are legal, as long as they are in that proper order. And if you'll notice, this card does not get you any points as a reward. This gets you a special effects token, which we'll talk about later. And in the top right-hand corner, there are also some icons that will help you with scoring as you progress through the game. The final type of scene card is the adjacency scene. And this basically requires you to have a central animal type. In this example, it's a lion on a water space, followed by certain animals in the 8 spaces surrounding that central space. So in this example, we need a lion on a water space with 2 jackals in the surrounding 8 squares, one of which is on a grassland space. Now, a game of Wild Serengeti is played over the course of 6 rounds, and each round, players are going to be taking turns, taking actions using their player marker until everybody has passed consecutively, which would signal the end of that action phase. At the start of the game, players will have 6 available actions to take, and they're all resembled here on the action board. 4 of these types of actions give players the ability to put animals out onto the board, and each type of animal is grouped into their own sort of grouping.
Yeah, we have the carnivorous predators, we have large mammals, we have scavengers, and we also have migratory herbivores.
Yeah, makes sense, right? And so depending on the number of players, there'll either be 1 or 2 of these action spots available. Right now we're playing a 2-player game, so this second spot here is considered locked. And so on your turn, in order to take an action, you place your player piece on one of these available spaces. So if I wanted to put a giraffe out onto the main board, then I'm going to place my player piece right here. Whenever you take an action, it's going to cost you 1 coin. And so we start the game with 6 coins in our supply. As long as you have 4 or more coins in your supply, you are not allowed to pass. You must continue taking actions. So I'm just going to go ahead and pay my 1 coin to put a giraffe onto this grassland space. Now my player piece is going to stay here until it comes back to me. When it comes back to my turn, I'm going to remove my player piece and place it somewhere else to take a different action. However, if Naveen on his next turn wanted to take this action where my player piece is, because there's no available action spaces, he would have to pay 1 additional coin for a grand total of 2 coins to put these types of animals out.
Exactly. So if I really wanted, like, let's say an elephant, I can place my piece adjacent to the spot that Monique is in, and then I would pay my 2 coins. let's go ahead and pay those. And let's put my elephant where I want it. I want it right here in the water.
Beautiful.
Okay.
Drinking water. And that is essentially how all 4 of these action types work. They just have different arrangements of animals. The other 2 action spots that will be available to you in the first round are these 2, and they have to do with taking or flushing the scene cards from the scene pool. So in the scene pool, you'll always have 6 scene cards face up at any given time. Each player starts the game with 4 scene cards, and scene cards are always face up. It's always public knowledge, so that you can always see what people are working on, so that when you move animals onto the board, you don't accidentally help them fulfill a scene card, right? And so this action over here just allows you to take a card from the scene card pool. You must pay 1 coin to take a card, and each additional card that you want to take during this action just costs an additional coin. So if I wanted to take 3 of these scene cards, I would have to pay a grand total of 3 coins. I do want to note that you can only hold at most 8 incomplete scene cards face up in front of you. So just keep in mind those restrictions. Now, if you don't like what you see face up in the scene pool, you can take this second action, which allows you to flush the scene pool before taking cards. It's essentially the same thing as this action, except you get to flush the whole scene pool first and put out a fresh 6 before you select them. Now, starting with the second round onwards, these 2 action spaces become available, and they allow you to move the pieces around on the board. Starting with this action over here, this will allow me to swap 2 animals on the board. And so first of all, I have to pay my coin. And I have this scene card here that requires me to have a leopard on a water terrain, as well as a jackal on a woodland terrain. Right now, I have that jackal over here that is on a woodland terrain, so all I need is to move this leopard onto water. And so I can take this action to swap the elephant and the leopard, so that now I can fulfill my terrain card, earning me 3 points. Fulfilling scene cards, by the way, are a type of free action, which we'll discuss again later, but whenever you fulfill them, they just get placed into your completed scene cards section.
It's also important to note that you are allowed to fulfill as many scene cards as possible on 1 turn. Okay, so now that it's my turn, I see an opportunity to score a scene card. So I have this adjacency scene that requires a vulture to be in a wooded area, as well as next to a crocodile. And so the other type of action that we can take is to move animal 1 to 3 spaces. So I would do that, and I would pay my 1 coin. And this space allows me to move 1 animal, like we said, up to 3 spaces, always moving in an orthogonal fashion. So in this case, I'm going to move my vulture through 1, 2, to this wooded area, and that now satisfies this scene card because I have this vulture in a wooded area that is next to a crocodile. So it's important to note you can move through animals, but only 1 animal can ever reside on 1 space at the end of a turn.
Yes, that is the hard rule, 1 animal per space.
Yeah. So this one gives me no income or any type of bonus right away, but it does have the symbol at the end of the game, which will be very important.
And those are all the different types of basic actions that you can take in the game. In addition to these basic actions, there are also 3 different types of free actions that you can take as many times as you wish on your turn. One of which was completing the scene cards, which we already discussed. The next type of free action is discarding incomplete scene cards. If you really don't think you're going to fulfill them, you can discard 2 of them for 1 coin, because as you can see, money is necessary. And the third type of free action is spending special effects tokens as well as food tokens. Special effects tokens as well as food tokens are mainly earned by completing scene cards that give them to you as a reward.
As a free action, you can spend 1 food token to move an animal 1 space, and you can spend as many of them as you want. So if you had 3 food tokens, you can move that animal up to 3 spaces.
Yes, you just cannot move them diagonally.
Correct.
So if I had 1 food token, I could move the giraffe over here to the water space.
Exactly. And the special effects token allow you to ignore the terrain type on one of your scene cards.
And going back to the scene cards, let's just discuss these symbols at the top right-hand corner before moving on to end of round stuff. And so there are several types of symbols that you'll see at the top right-hand corner that you'll earn whenever you complete a scene card, and they do different things. So these 3 types of symbols that have a green background to them help you score more points when completing specific scene cards that require them. Similarly, there are also these gemstone symbols that are very rare. There's only 5 of them in the entire game, but they get you a lot of points, depending on how many you have at the time of fulfilling the scene card. Other scene cards have special effects or food tokens at the top right-hand corner, and these will get you those specific bonuses each round. And the last 2 types of symbols are these like symbols as well as these animal paw print ones. And so the like symbols will get you a certain number of points at the end of the game, depending on how many you have completed, which can be quite lucrative, actually. And the animal paw print symbols have to do with the animal awards, which is coming up next. And so once everybody's finished taking actions, then we move to the round preparation phase, where we're going to move the round tracker and resolve any special events that occur. And so in rounds 4 and 6, we're going to have an award ceremony. And so at the start of the game, you're going to deal out 2 of these cards out of a deck of 12. And each card represents one of the different types of animals that you can place onto the board. During these events, we're going to score points for whoever has the most number of those symbols showing, as well as those animals on your completed scene cards. And so those paw print symbols on those completed scene cards, they count as wild symbols for these award ceremonies.
Right. So in our example, we have elephants here. So whichever player has the most amount of elephants, essentially what you're going to do is you're going to take that number, multiply it by 2, and that's how many victory points you're going to get right away. Whoever gets second place is just a 1x on however many they have. And so those animal paw prints become very useful because they're not only useful in this round 4, but they're also useful in round 6 when we'd be assessing for crocodiles.
Also in rounds 4, 5, and 6, we have a Great Migration, which would require us to draw one of these cards, essentially having us remove animal tiles from the board. So this is a way of kind of foiling your plans. And since we're playing a 2-player game, this card would have us remove the leopard and the vulture, looks like, and maybe even the elephant.
Maybe the elephant, yeah, I think
the
so.
elephant too. Then you do general end of round cleanup, which includes gaining more income. So you're going to have more money each round, as well as any kind of bonus tokens that you may have acquired through completing scene cards. You also flush a little bit of the scene pool, and then you pass the first player marker and you continue playing this way until all 6 rounds have been completed. And at the end of the 6th round, whoever has the most points wins. And that is essentially how you play the base game of Wild Serengeti. I do want to mention that there are advanced rules in the rulebook, and they essentially just give everybody an asymmetric player that has a special ability, that you can use the entire game.
So that is Wild Serengeti. If you do have any questions about the game, feel free to leave them in the comments down below and we'll try to get to them as soon as possible. Also, if you are interested in this campaign, there is a link in the description where you can check out even more details about this game. Plus, if you'd like to see more videos like this in the future, please consider subscribing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.